Since its launch in 2005, Broad Street Review has sought to promote the exchange of viewpoints rather than any particular point of view. To that end, we welcome commentary from professionals and amateurs alike about the performing and visual arts, as well as any other field of interest to our eclectic group of contributors. The following interview was submitted to Broad Street Review, powered by Rep Radio.
But I'm here with Christina May. Yay!
Hey, I'm here. Listen, get into it. Yes. AKA Ms. Frizzle. Let's go.
Ms. Frizzle. Awesome. I'm trying to think of the first time I met you, and I think it was at Walnut Street Theater up at Independence on 3. And it may have been
is
before
that the show where they were like doing all the characters? And was that the first time we met?
I think so. I just remember.
Or was it at the I keep thinking I met you at the Barrymore's, but you keep telling me that you weren't there.
It's quite possible. I mean, I was at the Barrymore's, but
were you at the Barrymore's last year?
Yes.
Okay,
but I feel like it was
do you
before
remember
that.
I think I saw you last year because I did an unofficial Facebook Live.
Oh, okay.
I was interviewing people last year. I hope that comes back up in my memories because that was pretty fun. I just showed up with my camera, and it was real shaky, but it was a lot of fun to just interview people. I was like, I'm going to make myself into the bear, and I want to interview people and
especially
be like the Black Joan Rivers of the evening. I decided to do it myself.
Especially if you're already comfortable with yourself and you're comfortable talking to people and people know you because you're so engaging, like you are the right person for that, to really.
Well, that's a really great segue because it's like, I'm sure we're going to get into this. I don't want to jump any guns. But I was thinking about it the other day and like just being like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this, speak with you. And I was like, I felt, because I'm the type of person that just does it. And I realized that I've been in a city for almost 2 decades. Like, so I was like, has it been 20 years already almost? Almost. In about a couple of years, it'll be 20 years. Because I came to Philly in 2001.
Isn't it mind-blowing when you just touch base with somebody who's like, you've been here for 20 years, I've been here for about 20 years, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. And I know for me, the reason I haven't crossed too many paths is because my introduction to theater, into this theater community, didn't really start until about 2005, and I had already been here for 5 years. And
that's the same thing with,
And I also didn't go to any of the colleges that had a theater program here, so I didn't know the community the way many people know. Like, I'll sit with one of my plus ones, and they'll tell me about some of the, personal situations going on with some of the actors or the artists in the community, and I'm like, I don't know anything about that. I just know the last time I saw them on the stage, I'm like, I had no idea this person's like not married anymore, or like left town, came back. Like,
listen, I think we're the type of people just sit next to us and the tea gets spilled, and I'm like, I'm just gonna brew this tea. I'm just gonna sip on this tea. I'm gonna keep it on in my tea bags, and I'm gonna keep it pushing. Yeah,
definitely. But so when at least in this moment when I was reintroduced to you, was Independence on 3, and I think I was there with my friend Melissa Amalani, and she said, oh, that's Christina May, and you just kind of walked into the room like, hi, welcome to my show, I hope you're comfortable. Like, wait a minute, is she part of this? But you just had this presence where if they didn't know you, they were smiling because of you. And I feel like every time I see you, it's like that. There's just this, I don't know what the radius is around you, but it's nothing but smiles around you. And I hope you noticed that, and I hope I'm not the only person that has reminded you of that.
I really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
So, so I wanted to know, like, you've been here for 20 years. How'd you get your start in the theater community? And, and then we'll bring it up to present day.
Sweet. So I went to UArts in 2001, and I came from Baltimore. So I was at UArts, and, the UArts today, I always say, I feel like I was like a little grandparent because the UArts now has a food court. They have all the levels and buildings in Terra that work. Anybody who was in UArts circa 2001 to 2007 can attest to this. It was just real. It wasn't janky, but it was a more like hub. It was more internal, like a small little hub. Now it's got all cute and all glitterized. And so I was there from 2001 to 2005. And then when I graduated, I got an apprenticeship with the Walnut Street Theater. And I was there post-graduation, and that taught me a lot. Then I took some years off, and then just to grow and figure out who I was as an artist, because I think at the time, what I have seen happen is the support of the theater companies really using these students from, let's say, Temple University, University of the Arts, Villanova, and bringing them in to the actual working theater companies that are happening here. I was like around before 1812 was 1812, or, I went to school with Megan O'Brien, who, started up 11th Hour. So these companies were still building themselves. So then I came back, I would say, I really never left, but, I did a couple of shows here and there, doing the acting thing mostly, trying to audition, all that good stuff. And then I came back in around like 2009, and the Walnut Street Theater at the time would do these second touring companies. And so then I did a couple of touring companies, and then teaching fell into my lap as kind of like a gift with a nonprofit organization of arts at the time. And I was like, I really love teaching. So I was able, and I'll always really appreciate the education department at the Walnut Street for this, I was able to hone myself and actually cultivate my style as a coach and an educator and a theater person, and becoming the advocate that I am now for theater making and theater performing, because I was able to teach semester after semester. Then I started to branch out and, started to work for Darlington Arts Center, and then I started to work at the Arden, and then I just started to start working with different companies. And so a shift happened with me because as a creator and as an actor, I found myself having to, at the time, there was not really, I would work, but it wasn't really like, I had to cultivate my own creativity. I had to find places for my own energy, because people would be like, this is great, but there's a cycle that happens, especially if you are a person of color in here, where they see you, they know you, and you kind of have to make your paces. And I don't know if it's the way I'm made, but I'm like, listen, you've seen me 17 times now. If this is the 18th time and you ain't sure about me yet, it ain't got nothing to do with me. It's something about, it's something that, I'm worthy to take a chance on. So I think once I started to cultivate myself as an artist and start to like open myself up a bit, because a lot of times I think as creators, if we're trained in one area, we like to stick in that area. So there was a time that I was just an actor, and then I started teaching, and then I started to direct, and then I started to produce, and then now I've become this beautiful, bountiful tree that has been navigating on the outskirts of the theater community for over this decade. And I kind of pride myself in the ability to, work on artistic projects that really speak to me, and then continue to cultivate and create in art organizations in the city of Philadelphia.
I love that. Beautiful, bountiful tree.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt that way too. I was thinking, I asked this community, I polled this community if they thought there was any value in an arts podcast. And, well, I wouldn't say polled the entire community, but there was a collective of leaders in this room, and we presented this question at the start of Rep Radio, and they all said sounds like a good idea, but it sounds like a lot of work and a lot of effort for little return.
Mhm.
And so my partner at the time, we just looked at each other and said, "Score, no competition." You know?
Right.
But at the same time, so I feel like, and I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I was listening to another African American artist who said, I think it appears that people of color with talent tend to take back seats whenever possible because it's safe. So for me, I was always a stage manager. I was stage manager all through high school. And then, when I thought about Rep Radio, I was thinking about being the producer of Rep Radio. I just thought Rep Radio should exist. And so I had another host who was an actor who was trying to make a name for himself in the community. And I said, you should be out there and talk to other artists, as if you're having a green room conversation. And I was steering him while he was finding his own voice. And then there was a whole lot more that I wanted to cover that he wasn't available for, and that's when I sort of pushed myself to the forefront and said, you know what, if you want to do it, you got to do it. So go ahead and get out there. And I think it was, you got to get over how your voice sounds on recording, and I think that was probably it. So now that I'm very comfortable with my voice, I'm like, you gotta get it. Who is that voice? Wait, that's me? Okay, all right.
Yes,
So I'm happy with that. And so now I can't even. I'm thinking like I don't even know how I ever ran Rep. I mean, I love the people I worked with in the past, but I'm saying like I don't know why I was ever afraid to share my voice with this community.
It's interesting you say that because I think the community itself is more open. It's about the time. And I think there's a lot of self-cultivation. I think that you talk about, hey, why didn't I could have did this the whole time. It's almost as if we're not empowered, if we don't see, because the people that do work actively and the people who do have the energy and time to do that, they're just doing their work and they're going back to where they belong. And I think there's a lot of times we don't see, we're starting to see now more people of color coming to the forefront, but like you talk about energizing your own magic. And I can identify with that because I have waited a long time for the system or this idea of the system to affirm me. And I said, you know what, Christina, you have a lot to offer this community. I know you feel the same way. Just get to it and do it and cultivate that light and energy and radiance. So when you do what you do, when you provide a spot for someone just to speak, or when I walk into an energy and exist in my wholeness in the space and don't hold back, it adds a level of energy to the communities that we exist in, and it's palpable, and people are drawn to it. So I think it's a mirror we have where I'm sure you add so much more, but people just enjoy it and never say thank you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing because now it's like I can fortify and say some of the things I want to do and some of the things that we want to add to the community. It's not the fact that we can't do it. It's just no precedence for it yet.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to build the engine. You kind of have to keep doing this thing. And then eventually there's a mysticism and a magic around it that people are like, I don't know what that is, but I need to be it. And eventually people will be like, hey, can you fit me in? Hey, can you fit me in? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just keep thinking, people get recognition after 10 years of doing the exact same thing.
Exactly.
Kind of like, and so you would think about that. It was that sort of was the case for a while with the F. Otto Haas Awards for Emerging Philadelphia Artists, where it seems like these artists have been here for so long, and I'm like, really? They're emerging now after 10 years?
Well, it's emerging. Yep. It's emerging because it's finally getting to the constituents. And the thing is, I don't think people understand how if you're in the community and your heart's in the community, these institutions that are, I'm grateful that they give to the theater community, they're just working on so someone can always be doing the work, and then all of a sudden it has to go through layers to get to a point where it's now worth recognition. So it's the same thing and when you see people that arise and all of a sudden they're like huge. You're like, oh, they came out of nowhere, and that's
like,
why it's so funny.
Actually,
like,
know that here's their body of work, and
exactly. And the same thing. If you exist with me, you've been here for over 2 decades. I've been here for over 2 decades.
Yeah.
People are aware that we exist. They just sometimes sometimes it's the next step to ensure that we're there. So it's like it's almost when you're aware, when you find your awareness of who you are and what you bring to the space, it kind of is one of those things that it almost makes it take a little bit longer. It's because a lot of traction happened when I was just existing and I really didn't know and I just went with the grain of things. And then I started to question, well, why is it this way? You know? And I started to ask certain questions and see things in certain ways. And then you also have to value your time and energy in the space because especially if you're a person of color in this community, you will, if you don't advocate for yourself, for your time, for your energy, it's easy to get used and get spent out a lot in projects because everybody wants to say, hey, I'm connected with this organization or I'm connected with this person. This person gives me that hip cultural tip that I need, you know, to feel like I'm inclusive or diverse. But how do we sustain that? Like, there's no reason why a company like Theater in the X should not be getting but the protocols, the systems, Theater in the X should be up there this year, you know, getting money for $10,000. But the way the system is set up, it's already built. So it's just like you're not going to change the 205 or almost 215 years of the walnut. You're not going to change the system. I hate to say you're not going to change it because that sounds like, don't fight. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But you have to find ways, and which is why you get inspired because what happens in places like Theater in the X or actually in Power Street in North Philly and these very small, tiny, and I'm not going to say they're tiny, but in lieu of the system
small but mighty.
Small but mighty. And that's actually a really great organization that actually gives actual micro grants to artists for teaching artists and for Frizzle. So they're a great organization to talk to because they're definitely something that this is what happens. Here I'm supposed to be talking about me and I'm repping other people. This is what we do with people of color. Yeah. We at the moment the spotlight's on us, we're like, hey, talk to this person. I mean, it's just the nature. It's the nature of who we are. And then the majority thinks about themselves and they put themselves first and, you know, they're able to get those cards from that.
Do you ever feel like you're in the room and since you're in the room that you're the way in for so many others?
Oh,
or
absolutely.
you can use the fact that you're in the room to really talk up some other people who should be in the room.
Well, I think that's a very nature of, yes, absolutely. And I think I've done that for years without any credit.
Yeah.
I've really been an advocate. Like if I'm in the space, I'm going to make sure you know who the other person is. Maybe if you didn't ask for it, only because I'm actually in the community. I think a lot of times with organizations that happen to have a budget, they have to meet a quota. They have to answer to their funders. They don't have that flexibility to go out in the community. The reason why I love seeing shows, and one of my favorite things is when theater companies say, hey, Christina, we would love for you to come to the show. We have a ticket for you. Come see it. I'm able to experience art and experience artists. And then, you know, that's my favorite thing to do when people say, hey, even with projects now that I can't take, like if someone says, hey, Christina, we'd love for you to be a part of this production, I would say, hey, I can't do it. But here's the name of 5 other artists who I think are great, that would be great in these projects. It's in doing that we continue to provide. There's all these artists that fluctuate inside of Philadelphia that if I see you and we meet, I'm going to do what I can to be integrated. And that's how we create a network of culture. And that's how we continue to keep the people that are valuable here, and build the community with the colors and the vibrancy and the spices it needs to sustain themselves.
That's very true. So let's talk about last season. And let's talk about some of the things you were involved in and some notable moments that stood out for you.
Let's see. I think being a part of In the Blood with Theater Horizon, that was a really beautiful moment for me. Because when I did the reading the year before, it was just really powerful, and I really commend Theater Horizon as a company for partnering and actually partnering with the homeless people in the area, and it was really innovative, and it kind of like went to the front door of the very wealthy people that were like, I didn't know this existed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And tears ensue and people walk out. So they really took a risk and a gamble. And that was a notable moment, because it wasn't just acting for the art of it. It was acting and actually seeing the actual homeless people that were without homes, seeing the show. So you talk about the level of authenticity and the stakes that had to be had, you know, as far as an artist that was a notable moment. Producing the Secret Show series at the Peanut Bride last year, I have a co-producing partner, her name's Phoebe Schwab, and we got a grant with the Peanut Bride Art Center, and we were able to curate called The Secret Show, and artists would come in and they would have a night where they could have an audience and create a theatrical experience. And being a participant, actually, for myself, was a notable moment. Anytime that I'm asked to come in and teach or facilitate art and creativity that embodies and uplifts the theater performer are all notable moments. And I just worked with Power Street Theater Company on a project called Hidden Disabilities, and I created this thing, and I said, hey, we're going to create this thing together. We're going to make it immersive, and I also want to give you a touring component so that you're able to do the show. And they have really taken that, and they're going to be doing an iteration of that on the 22nd, September 22nd, this Saturday, even. And I really, when I'm able to like back an artist or support an artist, and I see how that little window or that little thing, working with Theater and the X is great. You know, being a part of running numbers. And now supporting Cheyenne and her work, and then seeing her then come around and use her magic to create the Wiz. It's just been really. I'm really hoping to continue to expand. And also, whenever I'm using the Foundry. Whenever they call me in, oh my goodness, I had a great time. I did a play called, I hope I could say this, called Bitches, and it was like with Teresa McDaniel and Susan Riley and Kim Fairbanks, my big sister, and they killed it. This was supposed to be a reading, and that thing was like a one-act show. And Brie Knight, and the reason why I'm in spaces is that people advocate for me to be in these spaces. And that's the only way that I can continually continually visible in the arts community, because people advocate for me. Brie Knight was like, no, Christina May has to direct this piece. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it takes the people who actually have the leverage to not only say, oh, Christina, we love you. Oh, Christina, we appreciate you. Oh, you know, we love rep radio. Well, how can we get rep radio live in these events where the heart of the theater community is, in these predominantly white spaces, to continue to cultivate and bring that culture and energy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I love Brie Knight, by the way. After Pancake Queen.
Come on.
Had a
was like, you about to do this, you about to facilitate. And shout out to Jackie Goldfinger, and shout out to the people who actually say, hey, Christina, come do this piece, because a lot of times it's easy and I get it, you own your own product, this is your company. You should definitely be able to produce and direct any pieces you want. But there's so many directors and people of color that are in, the directors of color and producers and curators that are in the city, and they are the ones that get by the wayside because, you know, they're like, oh, come be my assistant. But if you've already cultivated a body of work, you're waiting for your opportunity to be able to chomp at the bit and be able to direct and cultivate a piece. Kat Ramirez is in the city of Philadelphia. She's awesome. She sound designs it. She's like a cultural haven. You know, I get to talk to people and get in touch with so many artists. And I feel like my eclectic my eclectic band of people who I'm with gives me the ability to be in the center of it all, hopefully, in my mind at least.
Yeah. Let me get your thought on that. There is a conversation, and it sometimes comes up as criticism that the companies, that these notable companies are not diverse enough. And then they produce a piece that is culturally diverse, and they're still criticized because it's like now there's a conversation of should they have been the people to present this piece because they are not the cultural makeup of the piece that is on stage, like the company, for example. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, because it sometimes seems like as a community we are just complaining for complaining sake, and it's like, well, make up your mind. Did you want them to do it or not? Because now that they've done it, you have nothing but critical things to say, and you're imparting what you wanted from it instead of just taking what they presented as what it is.
I think that is a very complex and twofold question. I think there is a dilemma thinking, well, I've checked. Here's the thing. There's a nature of, there's a difference between employing diverse actors on stage and making sure that the makeup of the production team, the director is a person of color and a person of diverse. Those are two different questions, and I think that sometimes, first of all, these institutions, they don't, some of these, not the higher institutions, I'm not talking about like the Walnut or the Wilma or the Arden. I'm talking about smaller companies that have a notable thing. They really are subject to their funders. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they're not like free enough, in my opinion, to be able to do whatever they want to do. They have to answer to the person that is funding the organization. So on one end, it's like, I understand both angles. On one end, you're like, okay, we gave you a diverse cast. Shouldn't that be enough? It's to put a Band-Aid over, we're not being seen, or we're not being represented, not behind the scene or in front of the scene. I've seen a lot of really talented, amazing directors who have fallen into the trap of being like the assistant director, and they use that assistant directorship and their promise, we're going to let you get on, we're going to let you direct. And that never comes because either A, it's a scary thing to give over this opportunity to somebody of color and you can't control it. You understand what I mean? It's not in the nature of the majority to think of the other. Thinking of the other is something that happens after the fact.
But when they do, it's
when they do, the heart of it is
celebrated, and you're like, oh my God! Like when Theater Horizon picked up Black Nativity, and Ozzie Jones did his thing over there, he just did it, and the world was like, all these. Maybe there were some people who had never been to Theater Horizon came there because Ozzie Jones directed that thing,
But do you have to understand the fight for somebody like, if you would think on the surface, that's the thing. It's like, we got Ozzie in. And the thing about it is a disconnect between having a person of color do a one-off and having that person of color be part of the fabric of your community. That's a whole different conversation. It's like, we're gonna, okay, you want us to be diverse. Great. You can't. All right, let's check those boxes. Hey, we got a couple non-binary people, got a couple of Black people, we got some Asians in there, we got some Latinos. You can't even come for us. We've checked our boxes. We're doing what we can do. Stop complaining. You're missing the very nature of the sustainability. It's all about the sustainability and the equity of the person living in the community. I'm sure you talk to Ozzie Jones. I'm sure you talk to to other notable people, and I would include myself in the mix. Well, we have to diversify the way in which we create art, just to get that one opportunity where we can direct. Like Amina who is directing Color Purple. That thing's about to be lit. But they had to take that opportunity. And as much, you talking about Amina has been in at Temple, film, television, for her to finally get the opportunity for her to be like, go direct this piece. There was Malika. Malika has been in and out of the city and, is growing in regional acclaim and is doing a piece for directing a piece for the Ardens next season. And it's like, you have to almost leave Philly, make a name for yourself, for Philly to be like, oh, hey, come on out here and get this opportunity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And,
well,
and
I used to make this joke to my friend who is a New York playwright. I said, let's just say, for example, here you are just the run-of-the-mill New York playwright, and you're trying to break through. You're producing stuff and you're consistent, but then you come to Philadelphia and you're a New York playwright. And his cachet is so much more elevated because he left his hometown, where his hometown should have been embracing him more. It's like this other town is embracing him because they want to be that hometown that he's from, or they want to try to pull some of that in to what they're doing. And I always think that's weird, that you do have to step away from home to get home cred.
Right. Or the idea that, I don't know if the Philadelphia theater community really understands the power and the energy in which they have to exist and really be a center of cultural sustainability for everyone. I think there's this idea that, like, we're like the cool drama kids, and New York is maybe the popular one. So instead of like leaning into our weirdness, leaning into our eclecticness a bit, we tend to still want and see what the majority idolizes in what New York has, versus being like, listen, this is who we are. And I say, as far as as a director is concerned, you really can get tired directing. I actually have a homie of mine, Jack Tambori, who came into the city. This man has a Yale master's degree, okay? He has gone in and out, and still it's like, hey, we know that you're there. We know that you're around. Give us some time. So when you're talking about directing, it's a whole, you got to almost like go to Broadway, get nominated for a Tony, and then they'll let you. You know what I'm saying? Then they'll be like, hey, what do you want to direct? And
they'll still be a little iffy, and they're like, well, you were nominated. You didn't win.
Exactly. Well, and this is still shade and tea to the community. It's not a shade. It's actually like, I get it. I understand. Once I started, and going from being an actor to then being a educator, then coaching, and then when I got into the producing, curating side of it, I was able to see this thing like, oh, you see someone as a fourth of one of these minor great theater companies, and you think they really don't have the say. Everyone is just trying to come afloat. So there's an equity as far as finance is concerned, where we just go on autopilot and we say, this is the way things are done. I hate it. I'll complain about it, but then I'll go along with the practices. And I think there's a lot of times where private companies and organizations, and actually the more commercialized companies, can partner behind a company. Like, imagine if like Comcast is like, you know what, the Internet is cool. I'm going to do a private, I'm going to give them a private grant as a tax write-off for them to fully fund their thing. And it's almost like it's separate, but we're all just trying to sustain ourselves. And so we they're not going to be like, I can't do it. But when you're not owned, you really can't do what you want to do. Yeah, we're thinking that these companies are independent entities and they have control over that. I mean, that happens all the time. It happens all the time. And you're like, this is a predominantly black cast, and why is this white dude directing this piece? It's because it's his company, and he can do what he wants with it. And it's hard to say that, like, well, he should change, but he's not answering to himself. He's answering to his funders. And a lot of times, the majority of people who these major companies are for are white audiences. You know what I'm saying? They might get a grant to be like, oh, let's diversify our audiences. let's get a grant to make sure it's cultural. But unless you have a person of color that you are paying and employing to activate this development, it's just the same thing.
Yeah.
Just with a little hot sauce on top,
That's a good point. And
it's the same white rice. It's just that we just made it like Indian. We add some turmeric on it, or we put some, pico de gallo sauce, But it's not jasmine rice. It's not brown rice. It's not basmati rice. It's not quinoa. It's just white rice jazzed up. So you don't know what it is, but so it's like. It takes a lot for these organizations, and it's going to take some time, but I believe funding the underground, there's a whole, there's a whole underground market of companies who are constantly creating and producing and promoting. And these underground companies have self-sustained themselves, and the people working in those companies and that's the thing, when you're able to get in, when you're able to be in the field and work your crop and still get in the big house, you get to go.
Yeah. That's the part I'm constantly, observing the community and thinking about, and I'm saying there was a time where a bunch of people got together and wanted to start like a small theater alliance, because it felt like. At the time, it felt like Theater of Philadelphia's focus was not necessarily, Theater of Philadelphia's focus is everybody. They want to promote Philadelphia theater. But there was a time where there was a thought that there was a need for, there's something different that the smaller companies need. They need a little bit more of a foundation of support. And there are other major theater corridors that have these different levels of support. So I always looked at all of these as so you want to be a successful theater company. That's why we're members, or that's why in the past we were members of the Theater Alliance, because we wanted to be a successful theater company. So by being affiliated with the Greater Philadelphia Theater Alliance, we were observing and we were in the company of these successful companies and kind of learning from them and sort of observing them and being one with them at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I feel like, just because you have a theater degree doesn't mean that you immediately know how to run a theater company.
Right.
You might just have, the foundation of theater. So you have an idea of what kind of work you want to put out, but maybe not how to put it in front of the right audience, or, you may not have learned risk. You have to kind of do it in order to pick up all that. And I feel like I always felt that there needed to be a collective of people who are just coming together saying, we're all trying to do this one thing. It'd be nice if there's always a concern about, there aren't enough performance spaces. I think
the idea is that when you stay in your purview and you don't go out of your meter and you don't go out to try to find it, you won't find it. It's the same thing we can't find these people of color to be a part of our pieces. They're there. But do you have the time and energy? And I just want to make a general statement about creators and performers in society for a second. Because we are, as a population, let's not even go into the microcosm of separating it into categories of, we are at a microcosm not really supported in society. The whole concept of theater making and theater creating is something that in society is deemed as that's something fun for you to do, So who you are as a professional, who you are as a theater maker is something that's the support of it in our culture. When you go, I want to go to school to create art. I want to go to school to produce theater. Oh, well, why do you want to do that? Why don't you want to have something with stability? Don't you want to have something with benefits to it? So it's kind of we're already we're already working at a disadvantage as a whole, as creators and in society. We are we also see the world. Everyone is created as a human being. I just want to put that out there. If you're a human being, you can create something. And when you're bent, just decide that you want to be a theater maker, that you want to cultivate theater, you're trudging up what they tell you is you're trudging up a road. And 9 times out of 10, it has to do with money, funding, and partnerships as far as like organizations that are theater goers really opening up their scope and really flooding those markets with currency. Because if those markets aren't flooded with money, people are just trying to sustain themselves. I know really good people that run really good companies, and they really have a good heart to do the work, but they're not sustained in themselves as an artist, so they have to continue to work themselves. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
I can only do what I can if I'm sustained. So there's a lot, and we have multiple hat complexes here. So you might find an artist who is talented, who also has their own company, who also produces on another company, who also does sound design in another company. So here we are, energy, and at the same time, we can't afford to take that time to pour into ourselves because there's not capital sustainability to give us that sense of relief that we can do those things. It's a systematic thing as a whole, and that's why personally I know that my voice and one of the things that I'm going to advocate for is the theater community, theater creators, and the culture of theater in society. Now that's a huge macro way of looking at this thing, and that macro way of looking at it boils down to the smaller inconsistencies that are happening that we see fluttering around. And what is the nature? What do you hear all the time? Well, that's just the way it goes. We just have to do it this way. But in order to be revolutionary and make the change, you have to have the power, the influence, and the currency to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the support system that's behind the community are old money that's just filtrated down, and they're not thinking about the individual artists. They're not thinking about the community. They're like, we're giving to theater. Oh, isn't this cute?
And this specific company.
It's exactly like, listen, Tiffy. Sorry to make this voice. Listen, Tiffy. Oh, yes, I support these couple of theater companies, yes. How many did you do last year? Oh, great. Yeah. They're not seeing human beings. And I know this because I've had that experience to meet one of the people who actually is the crux. And when I met this person, I was like, oh my gosh, I realized that they don't, it's almost like they're not human because they come from money and aristocracy. So they come down off their money cloud and descend down to this little theater company and walk around. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. How much pressure does that put on the organization who is getting money from them? So they have to navigate so much to sustain their money, which then sustains their team, which then pays for the working professionals that work under them, which then pays for the theater actors. And so to me, I'm all about actors' equity because the performing artist, in my opinion, is the most, poor performing artists, we just take what we can get. And it has to be an advocacy for the actor in society. You hear what I'm saying?
Yes, that is very true. And I think it's like an old model to want to support the brick and mortar and not the actual art that's being produced inside the brick and mortar. Exactly.
And it's all about my name on something, which is why a company, and I think like a company like the Wilma Theater gets a lot of flack a lot of times. And I had a revelation about the Wilma, and I was like, oh, this is a European theater doing European style work in America. And I think a lot of time audiences come to see the Wilma stuff and expect to experience an Americanized expression. of theater, and it's not, you know what I mean? But they're able to do what they do and have the hot house and support the artists and do their unique way of curation because of the fact that the guy is now the Aurora at the Loma. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Some person backed their money to them and was like, hey, do your thing. You know what I mean?
Because it's unique. Because it's not being done at 5 other theater companies.
Right. So I think there's a lot of these conversations, and also a lot of, you know who the people who are starting up these support teams are? The people who are already taxed. They already are doing the best that they can to survive. Mm-hmm. And now they feel a heart once again to try to build equity. So it's like the poorest community coming together. And I'm not calling the theater Philadelphia the poorest community, but when you think like, oh, my heart when I experience the way, like people go in and they see what happens at the park, come theater in the X time, but there's blood, sweat, and tears. And you can look and be like, everybody should have that cushion. When you think of a company like Power Street, who they do the best that they do to populate North Philadelphia and to bring the Latino community a vibrant, and people come and see it, but people don't take the next steps because they don't know how to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like seeing me around everywhere, and I'm everywhere. But does that mean that I'm sustained? Does that mean that? And I now have had to, cultivate. And if we don't advocate for ourselves and our persons as individuals, creators, and artists to make sure we have what we need, and that's a hard, arduous road. We're going to continue to try to make do with the scraps,
Yeah, definitely. What do you, I was going to ask, what do you think our community does well, and what do you think our community could do better? And I guess that's kind of a broad statement. But,
it's a broad statement. I think we do well of saying, hey, come on in. We're really good at opening the floodgates and allowing anyone that wants to create in the city to be able to create something. I think what happens is the individual care and the sustainability and equity of the people who are running it. And unfortunately, it has to do with, it's easy for you if you're already, as an individual person, already well off and sustained. If you come from wealth, it's easy for you to sustain yourself as the individual and keep full. And if you have the opportunity and the clout to create work, you can do that work here. You know what I mean? And it's a little easier because you're not worrying about how you're going to feed yourself. I always wonder, and I always ask myself, I have a lot of friends in different areas. So, I do a lot of things with the jazz community and the music community. They have a funding for their musicians. They have a jazz fund where, let's say you're in between gigs and you come up on our time and you're part of the community, you're able to come and say, listen, I need assistance to survive. And there's a lot of this facade that's happening where we're like, oh, I have it together. Look at my pretty casing. Everything's great. I'm smiling. What are you doing next season? And when you go home at night, you're trying to figure out how you're going to maintain yourself, and sustain yourself. So I think it's a matter of equity and sustainability. And one of the things I'm really excited about is that somebody, once again, which I'm really grateful for, Max. Why is Max's last name? Max is actually at that same show that we saw at Independence 3. I'm not going to butcher their last name.
Vaxapoli.
I think it's Max Vaxapoli. I'm messing it up. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, he's one of my closest friends, and I always feel like I'm saying it wrong too. Hi, Max.
Hey, Max. Max is the type of person that was like, hey, Christina, I see what you're doing in these streets. I'm gonna put you in this funnel for this key leadership of Philadelphia. And I think that what's my other boy who is amazing and genius, who should be the cultural voice of society? And he also hosts Moth. And why is his name slipping my mind right now?
He hosts what?
He hosts the Moth. And he directed Mrs. Harrison. That's it. R. Eric Thomas. I had a brain fart. My bad, boo. I love you.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, who was also, so to be able to be a part of something like that, and I'm like, ooh, you letting somebody in the streets who's, inside this environment, it's a great opportunity for me to be in a system and working with people, all these companies who they work for different organizations to really, because you need somebody to advocate for you, to be able to advocate first for myself. And, my family tells me that all the time. They say, Christina, you want to be like the superhero for the artist, but it first starts at home and how we advocate for ourselves and our own sustainability. And sometimes as an artist, especially being a person of color, that seems super selfish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not selfish at all to say, listen, I've started to do this with certain projects. I had to be like, all right, let me do the hour. If you calculated the hours actors work times how much you're getting paid, it is less, honey, than minimum wage. It is 0.25%. In a lot of times in the system, we're just running off the run. And I don't think it's saying, stop this shit. Like, hold the ship. It's actually creating something new as a holistic option to it,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it's often priced like they can just get it off the shelf. And just like, no, if I hire Christina May, I'm getting what Christina May delivers. And I can't get that from anywhere else.
Right, and I think even saying that sounds like something, I don't know, I'm a wild card, so I think my energy, my ability, and what I do the way I do it may scare the people who have to answer to people, It's like, oh man, she might be a little too hood around the edges, do you know what I mean? Because I'm going to come with my energy and all of me, and so you really have to take a gamble, and that's one of the reasons why, I would love to do a lot more things and more of the, it's this thing that happened like a director's gathering, which I had the honor, and I was the director there. That's another company, DG. They're another company that really does the work, and they're the type of company that could use $50,000. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because they're trying to pay and support directors, to be able to sustain themselves. But it's the culture of like, oh, well, you're going to struggle if you choose to do this life. And why is it that way? I'm being all existential right now, but I really try to advocate and move in intention, most importantly in love and in energy. But I mean, hey, if somebody wants to have a grant for me to pay to watch people's shows, I would do that. I would love to sit around here. But I really want to love on artists. Exactly. Come on, Rep Radio. Let's get this money, okay? We could be at every function interviewing people post-show. We don't got no problem. And it's the idea.
But I also think if they look up and see that you're here anyway, they don't think you need any help.
Exactly. And the
Which
thing
is
about
what you said earlier about the actors who have it together, who are just kind of everywhere, and then they go home and they're like, how am I going to make rent? And how am I going to...
Exactly. And we don't have these conversations because it's like... that was the thing. I had a friend of mine say, hey, I see your name all over the place. It's an assumption that just because you see your name everywhere means you would think that attaches currency. And I think that's one of the illusions that I have found, that just because you're everywhere doesn't mean, because sometimes, here's the thing, sometimes like you do it out of the love for it. Mm-hmm. When you're working with companies, you do it because you love who they are. They don't have it. I used to think that like the companies are like, you holding out on me, give me this dough. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if you think of funding, you think that the major chunk of funding goes to the corporations that are like, take the big chunks of it, right? So they're the ones that have already been established, so they get the chunk. So you get a spread on a buffet table. They go first. So then you have the second companies who they go second. And then you may have like certain companies who like have an aesthetic that are privately funded. And then you have the scraps. You hear me?
Yeah.
Most of the heart of the community is working off of the scraps, and we are constantly trying to build equity and build time. Because let me tell you something. You throw $500,000 at Theater in the X, they're going to continue to revolutionize, I hope. And no, they will. I'm not going to say I hope. No shade. They're going to do it. They're not. You can't be bought. But when you build a system and you're already identity, you already have an identity, you can have your own card. So like, I'm all about equity, and I have a way when and one thing I know, there are two things I know. I know about the mastery, craft of acting, and I know about what it means to be an actor and a theater creator in society. Like, I could speak on that all day. I will debate you down to the core. What do you want to discuss? Do you understand what I'm saying? And it took me a minute, and like we were talking about in the beginning, it takes us a minute to own our own magic in a way. Because being in America, your black magic or your queer magic or your whatever magic is not really validated. And you're waiting for a system to validate you. And then you have to go into your own reservoir of your own treasure and say, you're going to have to. And so now when I'm out into the spaces, that energy and that magic is my own engine being reflected and people feel it. Now I'm working on capitalizing. So it's like the holistic part, but also the capital. And we cannot be afraid of capital. And I believe the answer to some of the solutions is private capital. Not these grant organizations, but private businesses say, man, I really love who you are, that can have that tax-free write-off and really invest in a specific company for who they are and want to partner with them. It's like independent run music markets versus the major companies.
Yeah. I knew this was going to happen. I knew we were going to talk forever, and I was going to get to a point where I didn't want it to end. Which
it's okay. Listen.
I know we should have so many more conversations. You should come chat with me, like, periodically, just when you want to talk about stuff. But I think I'm gonna end on this good note to own your own magic.
Exactly. And listen, can I also say this before we're going to shut it down? I'm going to say this too. I'm going to really say this again. I'm going to say this very clear. If you like what you see, if you like what you experience with Rep Radio, if you like what you experience with me, listen, have us at the table. Create a space for us to sit down and come with a coin. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People don't talk about that. Come with the coin. If you have it. And I'm not talking about the theater companies that are constantly supported. I'm talking about these major organizations who have the funding. They have the funding. If you have a cultural grant and you're getting $30,000 for to get diversity, make sure you're paying diverse people to be in to run those programs. If you have a teaching grant for $15,000 and it's ever in North Philadelphia, make sure that you are connecting with Power Street and giving that funding. Do you know what I mean? Spreading the funding of it and sharing that wealth around. And know you can reach me. I'm on Facebook, Christina May. You can hit me up, Christina May 1111@yahoo.com. I will come out and speak. Listen, we around. All we need is the invitation. I will do a master class. I will speak at your institution. You know, I can code switch it up. Shout out to Jaylene's code switch, but I'm gonna be authentically in who I am when I'm doing it. I'm gonna be me regardless. Let's make this money and build this currency, because when you have equity and when you have wealth, that's how things can happen. So we in these streets. Holler at Rep Radio. Holler at Christina May. Come find. Take that next step. Not just appreciating us, but getting us with that coin. Hello.
I already love you, Christina, but I just fell in love with you all over again.
I love you too. This will be part 2. We'll meet together and we'll have periodic chats, and then we can have call-ins. We'll do a special and have people call in.
Let's definitely do that. I'm sure I will see you out in the theater at some point within the next couple of weeks.
All right.
But this was a pleasure.
I'm gonna try to be a color purple. Yeah, I'll see you in the streets. We'll love on each other. We'll make it work.
All right, Christina, thanks for chatting with me today. Truly.
Listen, thank you, Rep Radio. Can you do Rep Radio Rocks? Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
This podcast is brought to you by Broad Street Review, the website where art and ideas meet. Since 2005, BroadStreetReview.com is the place knowledgeable Philadelphians turn for honest, independent, and passionate criticism and commentary about Philadelphia's dynamic arts scene. Join the conversation. It's free. You can reach Broad Street Review online at BroadStreetReview.com. Follow us on Twitter at Broad Street Review and like us on Facebook. To show your support for this podcast and our Philadelphia area arts coverage, please go to BroadStreetReview.com and click the button at the top of the page that says Contribute. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.